Yes.
How many students do you accept each year that end up going to other med schools?
Oh, wow. This year we didn't think anyone was going to turn us down. We were a little bit worried, you know, because we accept over the number that we actually have spots for. That doesn't mean to say you would get a second letter that said, oh, gee, we made a mistake. We don't do that. It's just that we do accept more anticipating that students will go elsewhere. Most of our students who apply from in-state, if we accept them, they choose us. Our out-of-state students, as you can imagine, they're applying to medical schools all over the country. And if they get in other schools that are less expensive, you know, we have a larger population that will choose the other school, or they might get in the school in their own state. It's out-of-state tuition is $52,000 a year. So if you can get into an in-state school and pay $30,000 a year, I fully understand why you would do that. Although we do have out-of-state students who are accepted to other programs and they're still choosing us for the curriculum and other issues. So I can't tell you the numbers. I'm sorry that I don't have the actual numbers, but I'll tell you that we really get very few rejections from in-state students, more from out-of-state, but that's understandable, I think. So we feel real good about that. It just makes you wonder for a second, you know. So then what that means is people who are on the waiting list, you know, we didn't go very deep into the waiting list this year. And I can't tell you the exact numbers, but we didn't have to go into the waiting list very deeply. So, but you know, every year is different. When the economy is bad, you get more applicants. Everybody's staying in school, and the business track doesn't look as attractive anymore as it used to. And so, I think schools across the country have had increased numbers of applications. I don't know if that answers your question. Yes, other questions? How many of you are applying this year? Are any of you applying this year? Some of you are? Great, great. Well, good. I hope you'll enjoy your interview experience. So now, in the next part of the talk, I have to convince you to come to MUSC because of our curriculum. So we have undergone major curriculum change in the last 2 years. It's a process that we started working on long before the past 2 years, but our first year of implementation was last fall. Our first class, they're now second-year students and in their new second-year curriculum. So people ask us why we had somewhat dramatic changes in our curriculum when our results were really pretty good with the old curriculum. Our students were performing well on national boards. I should tell you that one of the reasons we got the award for diversity is not only do we admit a diverse population, we graduate them too. So it was also based on our success in getting students through the whole process. So why change? Well, you know, change is hard. It's hard for students, and I'll get to that a little later, and it's also hard for old professors to change. You know, there's a lot of work, but change we did. And in the next slide, you can see some of the educators around this table that I was privileged to work with in forming the new curriculum. When you get to medical school, you will give, no matter which medical school you go to around the country, you'll give your best professors an award from AOA called the Golden Apple. And I like to tell people that every time I met, I had a bushel basket of golden apples. I was in a position to bring in only our best teachers and have them work on the curriculum. And they did a great job. We did a number of pilot projects with simulation activity and methods that are alternative to the traditional lecture methods before we implemented the new curriculum. We do student evaluation of our classes. We continue to do that now, but we look very carefully at comments and suggestions students had made, and we evaluated ourselves against other medical school curricula. So in the next slide, you'll see part of the outcome of this change. So here was what I was hearing from clinicians. Second-year students would take their boards, they would do very well on step 1, and they go into clinic for their clerkships. And the next thing I know, I'm getting a call from, who knows, the pulmonologist saying, don't you teach our students anything about acid and base? I said, well, of course we do, and actually they do very well on boards. He said, well, when they get to clinics, they can't connect it to the patient. So this are little comments like this. So this worried me a lot, because that is our purpose. But then I had to say, why would you suddenly be able to do that just because you become a third year if we're not teaching in that fashion, because there was a disconnect. So what we were doing, and like many medical schools, we were simply extending your undergraduate education to medical school. So you come to medical school, you take 3 or 4 courses, and you get those over with and say, shoo, I'm glad that's over with, and move on to the next. And I did it in undergraduate school. I hated organic chemistry, and I was so glad when organic chemistry was over, and I can remember saying, I'll never look at that again. How many of you've had one? Surely. No, you're all better than I was, I guess. But we saw our medical students doing that. So then what happens is you get to clinics and you've so siloed and compartmentalized and lost all that information and never connected the pieces. So how in the world should we expect you to then connect that information to the patient? So we threw away all the courses. We threw them away. And in their place for first year, we substituted 4 longitudinal themes. And you can see by the content within the themes, the old course structure, not structure, but content. In structure and function, it's all elements of anatomy, physiology, and structural cell biology. Homeostasis and regulation is all about control, whether it's the nervous system controlling or genes, or hormones, or mechanisms by which cells receive signals. That's all in homeostasis and regulation. And then we've actually this year changed the name of food and fuel to molecules and energetics. And this is biochemistry and nutrition from a molecular level to the dinner plate, the whole continuum. Fundamentals of patient care streams through the year as well, and there are 2 areas of focus. One, on the patient. As far as you are concerned, how do you interview? What are the techniques for physical diagnosis? Understanding your patients. You will have a diverse population of patients. We want you to understand the patient population that you'll see in the future. We look at human development, and we help you to develop critical thinking skills. And then we also ask you to look at yourself as a developing physician, because it's currently known that the lifestyle of a physician is not conducive to good health, and it's not conducive to a long life. Your lifespan goes down when you become a physician. And if you're a woman, it's even worse. Okay? So why is that? Why do students lose their own health in the process of going to medical school? So we really ask you to learn how to build a good life in medicine, how to keep the very qualities and behaviors and activities that made you the person we wanted, how to keep yourself intact through the process of medical education and beyond into your career. And then we also help you with careers in medicine, because as you will see, the selection for residency programs, that selection process starts early in your medical education. So we provide you opportunities to get really excellent exposure to people and disciplines so that you'll know what you want to do. And we also help you with your professional behavior and development. Some students come through the door ready to act professionally. Other students require some help, and I assure you we let you know if you're one of the ones requiring help. And we give it to you because professional behavior doesn't wait for year 3 anymore, like the old days. You know, you could run around, extend your undergraduate attitudes for 2 years, you know, wear your flip-flops through the hospital and stuff like that. You could do that 10 years ago, but not now. So your professional behavior is expected on day 1. In the next slide, you will see a class. Here's your Clemson cheerleader right here. Dave Burris, do you remember? But you see a class from 2 years ago. And they are now in clinics, but they were at their white coat ceremony. And on the day of your white coat, you take an oath to become a physician and to acquire professional behaviors, which is suited for a physician. So we take it very seriously, and I'll have to tell you, for most of our students, this comes quite naturally. We always have great groups of students. The next slide. So after we developed our longitudinal theme, we then subdivided the year into blocks. The first block, 3 in the fall, and then 4 in the spring. The first block is called Foundations of Biomedical Science, and recognizing that students come in with various backgrounds, the Foundations block is to teach you the key building blocks or pieces of information that you need in all 4 themes in order to progress to a study of the systems of the body. And then we move into musculoskeletal system and then cardiovascular system and respiratory system. And you'll see there's that little column at the end called synthesis, and this is where we help you to integrate all of the basic science within the basic sciences, and then to bring in the clinical information so that you're looking at the end of each block at a really integrated body of information that you can apply to patient care. You have an exam at the end of each block, and it's one big exam. You have a study week prior to that exam. The exam looks, for all intents and purposes, like a step 1 board exam. This year we recently went paperless, and our students took their exams in modules on the computer. And the great thing about that, besides saving a lot of paper, is that the exam is as close to national boards as we can get it now. So not only the content, but also the way that you take the exam. It's down to a T. So when you go to take national boards, you're going to feel like you're walking into a block exam. We even build the numbers to get to national board level by the end of the 2nd year. We start at 200 and work our way up. The next slide shows you the blocks of the 2nd semester, which are renal and GI, followed by urogenital reproductive, and then cognition. And then we end with the major synthesis activity. Now we're also building, at the end of these blocks, problem-solving sessions, because National Boards is going to start for step 1. This year they're going to start asking you to analyze data, figures, solving problems. So we want to make sure we have our students ready for that. So we're building it into the curriculum. So what is synthesis? Well, synthesis, let me go to the next slide and come back to this one. Here's fall semester. Each of your blocks starts with a patient, a real patient, who's videotaped and who has agreed to be your subject matter for that block, agreed to allow you to see their medical history, their outcomes, their interviews with physicians. It's quite amazing that people are so generous. All the way through that block, we refer back to that patient, tying the basic science information to the patient. So if in the first block the patient has diabetes, and we're talking about the process of glycation in our biochemistry portion of the first block, doesn't it make a whole lot more sense to learn